tuned into Breaking the Mask of Depression with your host, Diva with Depression.
Hey guys, welcome to Behind the Mask with your host, the Diva with Depression. Thank you for joining us today. I have a special guest today, someone who I have met in my podcast sphere that's always been supportive and helpful, and I think is a major asset to the mental health community. So welcome, Terry.
Thank you. And when you said podcast sphere, I thought you said podcast fear. And I'm like, yeah, me too. I'll try to compose myself and not sound like I'm nervous.
So the good thing is that both of us have similar stories, and you would understand if I veer off, and I understand if you veer off. And
Okay.
of course, on my episode, everything goes. I say the F word all the time. I bleep. I do everything. So there's no wrong way. So tell us about yourself. I know everything, but tell us about yourself.
Oof. Oh no, like what part of it? The podcasting self or I was born in a small town? I mean, you
Let's
wanna
hear the
know?
podcast. Let's hear the podcasting self.
Okay.
first.
Probably go back a little bit to that. My background was news. I was in broadcast news. So I was a reporter and then did voiceover work for whatever, 20 years or something, independently freelance. And then when I had my worst ever depression and lost 2 family members by suicide, I came out of it and wanted to essentially create what I wish I had had. It took me a long time to realize what it was I wish I had had, what would have helped me get out of it sooner. And it would have been somebody else who had been there who could say, oh, that has a name. Oh, that's not just you. Oh, you haven't lost your worth as a human being. Oh, you actually, are still have worth and value. You just have this thing called depression. And if you're lucky, you can treat it with meds and therapy and you'll feel better.
Right.
So I started the podcast, which is Giving Voice to Depression, trying to share other people's stories and interview people just so anybody, whether they were reaching out or not, whether they had access to, therapy or groups or peer support, or if they didn't, they were just in their bed like I was, that they'd be able to, go online if they had access and hear stories of people that would be probably shockingly similar to their own.
Yeah, we always think that we're alone, even if I always tell my therapist, I have the brain, this one side of the brain that knows and the other side that's emotional. And so the emotional side always says we're by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's amazing how many of us are struggling with the same thing.
And we're not just saying it to ourselves, depression's saying it to us. I mean, I
Right.
don't mean to personify it, but it literally has a voice and it literally says, uses your own voice, which is just dastardly,
Yeah.
so that it seems like we're saying to ourselves, I'm a burden, I'm worthless, I'm always going to feel this way, I'm never going to be loved, all of those absolute things. And if you say them often enough, especially if you're saying them to yourself, we're taught to believe ourselves.
Right.
We're conditioned to believe ourselves. So when we're saying those things, like, yep, and you don't have the energy to challenge it. You don't have any incentive to challenge it because you're so beaten down by it.
Right. You're right. Okay. I know that you said that you have depression. I have treatment resistant depression. Do you have MDD or TRD?
I do not, and I'm so glad I don't.
Okay.
I have been very lucky that, I'm one of those people that when I take meds, they really do make a difference. No, it doesn't mean I get the right one first,
Okay.
and it doesn't mean I don't go down a hole that's worse, and it doesn't mean I don't put on 30 pounds. It doesn't mean any of those things, but I don't think about dying all the time.
Right. Yeah, I think that one thing that we don't do, not we, but, through reading and researching is that there's never, they never differentiate, how I say regular depression, but you know what I mean. Depression, MDD, TRD, bipolar, they sort of lump all those together and it becomes difficult to recognize who has what and what you have.
It does.
What age do you think that you started having signs of depression?
I'll bet I was really young, really, really young. If I think back to when I like remember wishing I wasn't alive, it would have been 13, but I don't think I was happy, preteens. It's hard for me because very often my worst, I'm going to use the word episodes of depression correspond to really bad things that were happening in my life. And so chicken egg, right? I don't know if I responded to them differently because I was depressed, or if the very fact that they happened triggered a depression. I tend to think it's the latter. But some of the things going on at that age, they take down the healthiest of brains.
Right.
And, the worst one in my early 50s, and we have talked about the hormonal aspect too. So it was a really, really bad set of situations and menopause. And that combination with whatever predisposition or predilection or whatever the hell words that start with P that, make me more likely to get depressed, including
Right.
heredity and trauma and all the rest of it. It was a perfect storm. It was just, I was just down and out. It was really a long time, and I just didn't have any sense that it was an illness and that I might someday rebound from it, or even just come out enough to function.
Right.
It's kind of over.
One of the things that I always talk about is my daughters and how I feel like I passed it along to them, but there's a long line in my family on both sides with mental illness. Do you have that same situation? Do your children live with it? And do you think that it's genetics as far as your family is concerned?
I think there's definitely a genetic component. I have never asked my children if I can talk about them in a podcast, so I won't.
Okay.
But I know that upstream, there is certainly my father. He had bipolar disorder, undiagnosed and untreated. Siblings, some of us are more honest than others. My little sister and I, who started our podcast together, she certainly is honest about it. If my brothers have it, they've never told me.
Right.
And that's fine. They don't have to tell me.
Right.
But it's also interesting. But maybe they think I talk about it. And I don't know, it's hard. It's hard when you have it in your family, and then life is hard. And then,
It is.
there's just so many things that can get you. And, even if I tried really hard to give my children the childhood I didn't have, and to have them feel really safe, and to have them know that it was okay to talk to a therapist. It was very, if our teeth are messed up or need cleaning, we go to a tooth doctor. If we're having trouble with our feet, we go to a foot doctor. And I just call a therapist a feeling doctor. And I said, when you have complicated feelings, I have never been a parent before. So, all I can do is my best, but I don't actually know what I'm doing. So, when there were times that, I thought something was that they weren't telling me maybe, or that I didn't have the right response because I had no idea. Then I would just say, let's just bring in somebody, a little above my pay grade who can get us on the right course. And sometimes that was school guidance counselor, because that's what we could afford and that's what we had access to as a single mother. But that made a difference too. It was just another set of eyes on them, another perspective, another, just not me, relying on me to do right by them, because where would I have learned that?
Exactly. I love that you said that you've never been a parent before. And that's so true. The same way, you want to give them what you didn't have, but there's no manual. So as much as you do, it can go off track, in an instant. And that'll set off another depressive episode,
Right. And what's too much? And
right.
We're supporting and we're enabling and all those slippery lines. And Yeah, it's a very complicated thing, and it's not like it ends when they're 18.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
I say that all the time. You know, I answer the helpline and I tell people there are babies until the last breath, you know.
That's true. That's true, whether they like it or not.
Exactly. They have to suck it up. So one of the things that stood out to me that you just said is that you have brothers and a sister. Is that,
Three
that's right?
sisters and three brothers.
Okay. Oh, wow. Big family.
Irish Catholic, yeah.
I have two brothers and we all grew up in the same environment.
Mhm.
We all have the same mom, you know, and so pretty much our stories are the same. But like you said, your siblings, some of them won't admit to what's going on with them.
And
Does that,
maybe nothing is, right? I don't know. That's the whole point. When I have no idea. It'd be nice just because it's our family medical history, right?
right,
It's just like, hey, anybody else have high blood pressure? Anybody else have high cholesterol? Because it'd be good for me to know if I'm actually making bad dietary choices
right.
or if there's a genetic component here too.
Do
And
you
it's
think that,
exactly the same with depression.
oh, okay. Do you think that that affects your conversations or, you know, do they understand even if they don't suffer with it, that you and your sister, do they get it?
I would go with a hard no.
Okay,
You know,
okay,
there are some who have made an attempt, at least to say, I don't understand it, but now that I listen to your podcast, I understand it better. And I'm sorry that you're like that. That's not the right way to put it, but that's what came out. And then there's the rest who say nothing
absolutely nothing.
other than don't talk about me.
Okay, that's another episode.
Yeah, you know, that's their right. I don't have any need to talk about anybody. You know, I mean, I'm fortunate that, like you, don't just have myself to talk about. When I talk about depression, I have many hundreds of people I've interviewed too. So I
Right.
can kind of speak of there's this and this. You know, there's the symptoms I have and there's the symptoms I don't have that I'm familiar with. So I don't need to bring anyone specific in. Who doesn't want to be brought in?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think, like friendships? You know, I have some friendships and family members who stop talking to me because I don't talk on the phone or because I can't, you know, get to events or whatever. Has that happened to you?
I'm a little introverted and
Same.
isolated. I kind of live in the middle of nowhere. I know you have really close friends that you can talk to. I don't have that.
Okay.
I'm going to try really hard not to sound judgmental here. It's more difficult to understand doing what I do for a living, and I'm in my 7th year. You know, you would think that perhaps you would hear, hey, if you do live alone and we don't see you very often, how would we ever know? How would we ever know if you were hurting? How would we ever know if you needed some support?
Right.
You know, can we have some safe word? You know, if you say I'm not coming and it's because, and be honest with us, it's not,
Mhm.
you know, the other night I said I had to work. Well, I probably did. I probably did work, but that's not why I didn't go. So I am to this day surprised and a bit disappointed, to be honest, that more people aren't. Yeah, just I always seem fine. Everybody, you know, I'm funny. I'm always seem fine. I always seem fine because you don't see me when I'm not. I'm not,
Exactly.
you know, I'm curled up in bed. Nobody knows that. So it's a hard one. Then again, they're going through things and I don't know what that is. And I'm not asking them. So if they have a child going through something and that is tearing them apart, I'm unaware of it.
Right.
So it may be just as disappointing or hurtful or whatever word you want to use to them. So I have to remember that I don't know what fibromyalgia feels like, and I don't know what MS feels like, and I don't know what Parkinson's feels like. And so I may not be being a proper support to them. And so I try really hard not to be just, oh God, I was going to say disgusted. that they don't try to support me because they may be sitting there thinking, where the hell is Terry?
That's
So
brave of you to say that, you could be part of the issue.
mhm.
A lot of people don't even say that. So that's a brave
Yeah,
thing.
I don't
to-
think it's why they're not supporting me. I'm just saying I might not be supporting them.
Right.
They're not supporting me because they don't understand it, and because I was gonna say because they don't care, but that's what it feels like. And I'm hoping they don't watch it. If you are, hey, ask me. Yeah.
You have, and I'm always amazed at this, you have a wonderful career background, a reporter, and you said a voiceover specialist. Tell me about that.
Well, I was a news reporter and anchor in Milwaukee. You know, one of those Terry Bertha TV6 News.
Wow.
And mostly a crime reporter toward the end. And then when I had my first child, I just had all the stuff that you and I have talked about off camera,
Mhm.
and just decided that to the best of my ability, I was going to be home and figure out how to work freelance, because news wasn't just a 40-hour-a-week job. And, if something happens at night, you might get called in, and that just really did not work. So when my first child was born, which was 33 years ago, I went freelance. And so I did on-camera narration. There's a lot of businesses around here, American Family, and
Okay.
well, I'm going to lose all my clients here by forgetting their names, but the breweries. I'm in Milwaukee,
Okay.
Wisconsin, and I would stand there and tell Kohler's new toilet, and do that sort of thing. And then there was all the voiceover work and a lot of commercials and medical narrations, and I can get out with a running start. I can get out the really long words, and they don't hear that I'm making it like this and then editing it together to make the long word. But I did that for decades, and then 6+ years ago started the podcast.
That's so cool to me. A reporter, that's so cool to me. And you know what is also fascinating, and you've probably heard me say this millions of times. I just think that it's so fascinating that so many of us that do public work are introverts.
Right.
No one would ever know, the mask, but
Yeah.
I always find that funny. And you have 3 careers, public careers, sort of, as an
Yeah, but
introvert.
only sort of, right? Because people say
Yeah.
all the time, what do you mean you're shy? What do you mean you're insecure? What do you mean
Right.
you have low self-esteem? You were on TV. And I'm like, I wasn't in a crowded room. It was me and the camera guy, the photojournalist who I knew, and it was just us. Were there some people around watching sometimes? Yeah, but not a crowd. So
Right.
it was as private as this is. I was talking to, back then, him, they were all male, and now I'm talking to you. So
Right.
it didn't, when I sat in the courtroom or when I sat wherever I was sitting to cover the event, the light wasn't on me. It was
Okay.
on the event I was covering. I was just sort of sitting there. So
Right.
it didn't, it was important to me. And again, we're talking around so much of our history, but I think that I went into that field to have a voice.
Okay.
And then I named my podcast Giving Voice. But, if you grow up feeling like you're not heard, and like your version of the truth is being dismissed or ignored, to be a reporter was really empowering, because I would be like, oh no, this is how it happened. And I
Right.
understand it was my perspective, and, so much goes into our perspective, and, somebody else sitting right next to me witnessing the same car crash would have a different version of events. But to the best of my ability, I would find someone to say they saw it from this angle, and someone who said they saw it from that angle. And I would say where I saw it from. Well, I don't think I worded that right, but I think that was part of my decision to go into news.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Tell us about Giving Voice to Depression. What is it all about?
It is a weekly podcast, and I interview someone every week, talking to them about primarily their experience of depression, their symptoms, their management tools, for lack of a better term, whether they've tried everything and nothing worked, or whether they are really committed to exercising and that works for them, or, it's usually a combination. I'm going to clear my throat here. Excuse me. All the things we all know, right? I mean, there are people who just swear by yoga, and there are people who just roll their eyes when you suggest it. So, I'm always so careful about it, but there is the list, and, we got to kind of try as much as we can to see what works, and just completely ignore what doesn't. So that's the weekly podcast. I edit it because of my background, right? So I can't just record and play. I have to overcomplicate it and go through and chop it up and do little narrations and transitions and stuff, just because that's my style. And then online, we post content daily, mostly quotes from the interviews I've done. And we have an online community on Facebook. And I know Facebook has really changed in every way, including reputation, since we started in 2017. But we've got almost 12,000 people there who have actively, whatever that word, liked or followed. I don't know what verb to use there, but there are thousands and thousands more who we see who have not followed or liked it. So I don't know how big it actually is, but I consider that a big community. And they're engaged and actively supportive of each other, and they respond to the posts that we do. And I have a son who works in all of this marketing sort of area, and he said, "Mom, there are Fortune 100 companies who would kill for your engagement."
Okay.
And so I think it's neat. That's a funny word. I know. 90. I think it is important that there's a place, and the other woman who monitors the site with me is the most committed human being I've ever met. And it's 7 days a week, 365 days a year, with 100% response rate. And sometimes it's within 15 minutes, but it's almost always within an hour, unless we're sleeping. But if anybody puts up any nonsense, and it's 2023 on the internet, it's going to happen. Somebody's going to say depression's not real. And we just gently say, you do realize you're in a community of people with it. So perhaps you might want to look for the depression's a lie community, and you go for it. But right here, that's not welcome. So, and very often they'll stay. So I'm like, were you saying that to us, or were you saying that to yourself? Have you heard that, or are you saying that? So there's lots of times that after you sort of say, you get one warning here. So if you say anything like that again, I'm just going to block you, because that's what we do. And we haven't had to a lot, but I have zero, just no patience for that. And then they'll stay and they'll stop doing it. And I think, okay, I get it, because anger and aggression can be signs of depression. So I have to be real careful and say, like, are you actually an asshole, or are you depressed and you're feeling like that and you're coming at us?
Right. That's awesome. That's wonderful that you've cultivated this whole community. It's inspiring to people like me who have no community. That's not true. I do. But when you say 12,000 people, that's amazing to me that you're inspiring 12,000 people. And I think that's key, whether it's one person, 12,000 people, you're doing great work. So
it's a safe place that they can go and read something every day, that's going to be related to a condition they have. Condition isn't the word I ever use for it, but they know they're amongst friends, strangers, total strangers probably, but people who get it. And it's just not that easy to be in a community of people who get it when you have something that lots of days you don't get.
Exactly. So I know that you've mentioned this several times throughout us knowing each other, and I think you said it in the beginning, but what was the catalyst for you and your sister creating Giving Voice to Depression? And it doesn't have to, it could be general, I know some topics are hard.
Yeah, it was my worst depression. It was just that. And there's this sort of altruistic part which is true, that, I wanted to provide what I believe would have helped me. there's also the incredibly selfish part, which is I just could not make peace with losing 2 years of my life
Right.
because, and here's the self-judgment, because I was too stupid to know I was sick.
Right.
And, that I can say, obviously, it's not just me, it's stigma. If people talked about it, I would have
Right.
known. If I limped for 2 years, they'd have been lining up to drive me to the hospital. They'd have been telling me to get an x-ray and the difference between a sprain and a break. And, oh, have you this? And can you put weight on it? All that. Nobody said anything. And when you're showing up when you can, I just remember, oh, Lord, just, those things you have to go to, they're, and sitting at the table, just like, how can you not all see that I'm just physically here? Like there was almost a delay, and it was, the words were sort of muddled and you'd be like, huh? When somebody
Yeah.
asked you something, like, why isn't somebody saying, hey, are you okay?
Right.
Again, if I just did that through lunch, someone would have said something.
Yes.
So I don't know, but nobody did. And so I wanted to make some sense of having lost that lost time. And if it was like, well, I've always said I'll walk over broken glass if there's something important on the other side. I hate doing it and just cutting my feet. Like that just pisses me off. So if I was going to go through that experience to get to a point where I was starting a nonprofit, which I've also done, and making a difference for who, I don't know how many people, but for somebody, that I would do that. I would rather do that for like a month and then do it 10 years, but that's how it played out. So those are sort of the two things. And then I asked my little sister because I was just afraid to do it alone. And I also thought if it was just me talking, it'd be like, yeah, it was okay. Point made. Now what? What are you gonna do for the other 20 minutes? So I knew with her, we had enough chemistry and history and banter that whatever topic we were talking about, based on the person's story, that we would be able to kind of keep a dialogue going. That answer your question?
I think so. Yes. Yes. I think it's great that you have someone that is willing to work with you and partner with you. That's hard to find, whether it's family or anything.
Yeah.
So I think
Well,
that's great.
very lucky, very blessed. She quit after 5 years, which she is more than entitled to do. It's like, I think we're there. We got just started. And
Wow.
and also she asks the very real question, like, if you have 300 episodes out there, is there a worthwhile difference between that and 500? Is it worth doing this every week for another, and I don't know. I have said yes so far. She said no. And again, I understand both answers. How do you not understand both answers? So, and again, that's my news background.
Right.
I understand there's two sides to, I always say 3 sides to every story, right? And we certainly see that with politics and everything else. People who
Right.
truly believe what they truly believe might be the exact opposite of what we truly believe or I truly believe. So
That was actually one of my next comments or questions. Every day, I told somebody this the other day, every day I'm quitting. Every time I have to record an episode, I'm quitting. Every time I have to write a blog, I'm quitting. So
yes.
is that where do you see yourself? I guess maybe not. Not even 5 years, maybe in 2 years.
So many answers to that, because there's a part of me that thinks like it kind of feels a wee bit like a machine at this point.
Right.
It's sort of like every Tuesday I post a podcast, and then I this and then I that. But that question we talked about earlier, is that really your where you can have the most impact?
Right.
Do I take what I've learned, take my on-camera experience, make videos? Do I, I made a compilation of the answers to the questions. What does your depression tell you about you? And then how does it help you to know, tells us all the same shit. So that this bully isn't just picking you because you're Dee or me because I'm Terry, but us because we have depression.
Right.
And I thought, well, I could do one with, what are your symptoms? What does it feel like to you? how do you describe it? Because sometimes not having the language is what inhibits us from being able to say, no, I'm not sad. I don't feel anything. And someone else is deeply sad. And, someone else is angry as hell and there's no real reason. So it can help to know there are different flavors, to use a word. I think about conferences, should I now be doing that? And trying to have even mental health professionals,
Right.
say, hey, wait, you need to hear it from like what's going on in our heads, don't say, do you ever have suicidal thoughts? And I say, no matter what is actually the reality. And you check that box and we move on.
Right.
Or I say, let me give you a little bit of detail behind that question. Do you wish you were dead? Do you go to bed at night hoping you don't wake up? Now we're getting somewhere, because I might not even know that's considered a suicidal ideation. I might have never heard the term passive suicidal ideation. And it might not be concerning because I have zero plans. But is it a good thing that I think about dying, and that when there's turbulence on a plane, I think, ooh, this could be it, in a good way, not in an I'm scared way? There are just so many things that we learn talking to other people that I wonder if a podcast is the only way for me to share that information. I say that as if I could just get up on a stage and do a speech. And we've already discovered and discussed the introvert thing. So I don't know. And then there's a part of me that says, you know what, this is heavy. And I've been doing it for a long time. And I crawled. I mean, I was still on my knees, with my fingertips full of mud from crawling out of that pit when I started it. And right before that, was a really hard divorce and enormous amounts of betrayal.
Mhm.
And so it's like, I can't really remember the last time that it was like, oh, this is nice. This thing called life is, the sun feels so nice on my skin. So I wonder sometimes if for my own self, should I be like, you know what? I did a good and important thing, and I gave it my all. And I think I'm gonna make art. I think I'm just gonna. How do I live on that? So but there's all those questions. But maybe I just start. I've made my life this big, so I can afford it. I'm not paying for a palace or a nice car or any of those things. So, I have an affordable life, and I could probably afford it just doing my mosaics and doing art shows again. So I really don't know how do you answer that question? I mean, what do we do if we don't do this? A, when we know how important it is, and B, when it's kind of in our blood.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah.
I know that, and I always share this, that I can't get out of bed a lot of days. So I record in bed or I write in bed.
Right.
And doing these things doesn't just help others. It helps me also, because it gives me a purpose to do something.
That is true.
So where's the end to that? Because it's sort of like, if you say that there's an end to this persona, what persona is going to take over?
Yeah.
So I get it.
And it is having it doesn't have to be a mission or a purpose with a capital P, but believing you're doing something of value is a really important protective factor against suicide. And,
right.
There are a lot of them, but I don't have a lot of the other ones. And this is one,
right.
That the mornings that I think, why bother? Like, just like, who are you kidding? You're just a worthless piece of junk and you have no value. And I'm like, oh, I actually know that's not true. I
right.
actually know that's not true now because of the feedback we get and people who have said breathtaking. There are times that I'm like, you're kidding. It was certainly my hope and my intention that these stories would resonate with people and actually provide them hope. Or I've had people say, do you have this in writing? I'm going to take this and I'm going to print it out and I'm going to bring it into my psychiatrist and I'm going to say, this is what I've been trying to tell you. And I think, oh, what if we could move the needle on your therapy or on your
right.
treatment or on your will to live, which has also moved with some people. there's that other question. How do you stop?
Yeah.
'Cause
Yes.
it does help us, it's like, yes, no, I'm not worthless. I am not a worthless person. And no, all of my talents have not disappeared.
Right.
I was laying there in bed just going, how did I pull off anchoring? Such an idiot,
Right.
and the total imposter syndrome. I was like, wow, did I actually just expend all of my talents by whatever age I was, 50 something? I thought so.
Yeah.
I might think so again tomorrow.
I want to add to that your episode with when you interviewed the doctor. I think it was the week before last. Was it a doctor or a therapist?
Surgeon,
Oh, okay.
Dr. Weinstein.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Great episode.
What a beautiful person he was.
And I actually told my therapist about it. So, we're all dragging your stuff to therapy.
Cool. Because he just was so brave. I mean, his name was Dr. Michael Weinstein, and he's in, I think, the Philadelphia area. And he wrote an article, and I always mix up the two medical journals because I don't read either of them, but I think it was the journal JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. And about, I think it was called like Into the Straitjacket. I mean, he was not being like,
Wow.
oh, I went from being an MD to a patient and I found that transition difficult. This was like gritty. This guy was still genuinely breaking into tears, not like a TED Talk tear,
Right.
like insert tear here. I mean, he was still really feeling, but he was locked up literally in a straitjacket in a solitary, whatever that's called. Not, I always want to say solitary confinement, that's prison, but an isolation room or whatever they call them in a psychiatric hospital. And it was only through that experience that he learned what we think.
Right.
It was in a group setting that he said, wait, what? And I was thinking, shouldn't you have learned that in medical school? But of course, a surgeon isn't learning what a psychiatrist is, and a psychiatrist might not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That was good. Thanks.
Yeah, that was a fascinating episode. I just wanted to tell you that. But I think all your episodes are fascinating anyway.
Yes.
Uh,
I really rely on other people. I couldn't do what you do. There's no way I could keep just me talking interesting, because while I am rather chatty, I don't think I could stay at all on topic, because I'd be like, oh, shiny object. When I have the different guests, it really helps me, because it's
It gives
like,
you,
a crusty old vet and a young girl who, whatever, anything. It's been so long since I was a young girl.
Right.
Just all the different people that I interview come from such different places and have such different experiences that, yeah, that's sort of what adds the flavor for me. Plus, I like telling stories. That is my background. So, yeah.
one of the things that has always, well, I keep saying this, one of the things that fascinates me about you, but your podcasts are 20 minutes long. Now, I have no idea how you do that, but what made you decide? Was it always 20 minutes, or what made you decide to just stick to 20 minutes?
Sometimes they're 25 and sometimes they're 17, but they're usually somewhere around 20. It was the reduced attention span of people, for people with depression.
Okay.
Because I know, I've been on podcasts that have gone an hour and a half and 2 hours. I'm on them. I'm the guest and I can't listen. I don't even listen to see if I made a mistake or said something that I need to apologize to someone for.
Right.
I just am like, oh, who would listen to this? So I was trying to make them sort of bite-sized, but not like, if I did an interview with someone and then you take off the intro and the, outro or whatever, close, and just had this in the middle be like, that's when we're going to talk. Sometimes it can take 10 minutes to kind of get to the good stuff.
Right.
And sometimes somebody goes, oh boy, let's say they're talking about the importance of nutrition, and there is importance to nutrition. There is importance to hydration. There is importance to exercise. I don't think I said that correctly, but do I want to hear someone talk about that for 15 minutes? I do not. So
Right.
that way I can say they have several things that help them. Nutrition, and you can just say, if I don't have even when I can't cook a healthy meal, I make damn sure I have protein bars and sliced apples on my nightstand,
Right.
period. Then I can say, and exercise. And they say, I try to get outside at least twice a week. Boom. So that's where my audio editing, right? Because that's, again, my background. So I just try to, because news, you had a minute and a half,
Right.
sometimes 45 seconds. And when they said a minute 30, they did not mean a minute 33. They did not. I mean, you could get like in some real trouble if you go, it's 1:37, that was not okay, because somebody else had to take 7 seconds off because they got to start at the right time and end at the same time. So I think that background really kind of stuck with me. And it's like, I could summarize War and Peace in 20 minutes. When you had a minute and a half to tell whatever happened at a budget meeting that you were at for an hour and a half, or a murder scene, minute and a half, that's like nothing. I've sneezed for a minute and a half, but it's also a really long time if you choose your words carefully.
I appreciate that as being the patient. I say patient because you're right. We could tell the story about getting to this place with our meetings and our emails.
Oh, yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
Oh my goodness. And I said if it was
Leading the
anybody
blind.
else, they wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
But
who's 2 o'clock? Who's 3 o'clock? What do you mean 2 o'clock?
That's true.
Yeah, I'm that way. When I interview somebody from, oh my Lord, the UK or someplace, I'm just like, I don't even know what day it is. And I've set things up where when I actually figure it out, I'm like, oh my God, I just scheduled a meeting for 2 o'clock in the morning. I have to be awake and sound okay and have makeup on at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'll do it, but I don't love it, and I'm certainly wearing jammy bottoms, yeah. I am right now too, so it's not a 2 in the morning thing.
So Terry, what makes you push through? What makes you keep going? Is there one thing? Is there two things?
That is such an interesting question, Dee. And I don't even know that I have an off switch. I'll tell you the honest answer that comes to mind. I want to say it. I can use the word trained, I can use the word conditioned, I can use the word programmed, I can use the word groomed, that my value was based on my productivity. I was told I was going to get straight A's in school and pay for that school. I was told, I had to graduate top 10 in my class in college. And I went to a big one. I was told that, I should be in a top 30 market. Well, all those things are really hard,
Right.
but I did them. But I think that's why I think I have low enough self-esteem that if I actually stopped doing something that I know has value, that I would lose value. There's your very honest answer.
I love that.
Why do you?
I don't love that you're going through it, but I love that your answer. I love that. Quickly, because I have to ask, you mentioned art, and I'm a huge fan of art. Well, somebody corrected me, art as therapy. And if I turn this camera around, you'll see Easter wreaths everywhere. You'll see a bin and a Cricut machine. What type of art do you do?
I'm a high craft.
Okay.
I'm not really artistic. I couldn't. I told my children if somebody ever came in the house and said bad things will happen if you can't draw a convincing stick person, I would be like, hey kids, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry, because mommy has no talent. But I do mosaics, and that's breaking up glass and gluing them and then grouting. And I've done full life-size mannequins, and I can give you some, and set pictures. And I do a lot of hearts, and I've done installations in people's houses and floors and walls and stuff. But there is a direct connection to what we're discussing, because for me, there's a really good metaphor about the windows I'm doing that look like stained glass. I pick up on the curb. Someone else thought they were garbage. I saw their
Wow.
beauty. The glass I use is all scraps from people who made real art, who made the cabinets like for a furniture company or something,
Right.
and the little strips that were left and fell into the crap bucket. I would buy the crap bucket. And so, or they would give me the crap bucket, whichever. I think scrap is actually the right word, but in their mind, it was crap. And so then I clean them all off and I make these beautiful things. And I think of the fact that it's so easy to discard things as broken and not see their strength and beauty. And I also think there's that metaphor for life, that things break, things break, and it might be vows and it might be hearts and it might be anything, anything. And it's kind of our job to
Right.
pick up those pieces and try not to just, really hurt yourself with all that, there's a lot of DNA
Yeah.
in my mosaics. I am always cutting myself, but, to put it together, to put it back together in a way. And if anybody ever looked at that plate that you glued back together, or that this or that, are they ever going to say it's exactly like it was? Oh, it's even better than it was. And there's that Japanese art form where they use gold in the cracks and they believe
Right.
that it makes it more valuable and more beautiful. But the world doesn't work like that. The world doesn't look at us and think, oh, you have depression and you think about dying and, you put on a whole bunch of weight. I think you're more beautiful. The world just doesn't do that.
They
And
don't.
especially when you're on camera. Imagine trying to be,
Exactly.
doing those things. It's like, yeah, it's real. I'm going to totally go off because you said I could. But when I had my daughter, so I used to be on camera, and I had this newborn and they needed a mother and a newborn. And I showed up with my newborn and in came a model. And I handed my baby to the model to be the newborn's mother. And I'm like, this is what a newborn's mother looks like. I
Right.
still had my pregnancy pooch.
Right.
I looked like I hadn't slept in a month because I hadn't, my boobs were probably leaking. It was like that. Wait, what? First of all, she's blonde, and we were like jet black hair.
Right.
And I was just like, huh. So the world really doesn't want to see, that. But I see the beauty in the broken, and I make something that has integrity, literal integrity from the glue and the grout. And I have them all over my house.
That's awesome. You have to send me pictures.
I
Now
would
they
love
said
to.
life size.
would
I
love
thought it was just, pictures and stuff like that. Life size, send me pictures.
He's a mirror man, life size Nike mannequin.
Wow.
So he's quite chiseled. And I don't even really want him. Do I really want like a 6 foot tall mirrored man in my house? Probably not. But if anybody's listening, they have a lot of money and you want to buy it, let me know. So yeah, that's what I do.
Send me some pictures.
I would love.
Tell us where we can find you.
You mean my podcast, right?
Yes.
I'm not going to give my
Yeah.
address.
You're a secret. You're a secret. Tell us where we could find this place.
It's wherever you get your podcasts. The website is givingvoicetodepression.com. It should probably be .org, but I just haven't gotten on that yet. We're on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, smart speakers. I don't know where we're not. There's so many players out there, Podbean and Libsyn, and when I Google giving voice to depression and the things that come up, I'm like, I didn't even know that was one, but how could I possibly? It's constantly growing and changing. And in 2017, when I started, we use SoundCloud to post it. And I think that might be like saying I use AOL for my,
Right.
email. I doubt it's the best choice still. And if anybody in SoundCloud's listening, prove me wrong. But I think we're at most of those places. And if you don't know this place, and the Giving Voice to Depression Facebook page, I always post every week. Across social media, I try to post it every Tuesday.
Right. Well, I want to thank you. Nobody knows that this is my first interview outside of my babies.
No one ever would know. No one ever would know. You're awesome.
Oh, Thank you so much for, thank you for that. And thank you so much for coming on and talking. Thank you for everything that you do, because I'm telling you that you're an asset to the community and to the world.
I'm gonna
And
say right back to you, same thing. Thank you for what you do, and I believe that you are gold.
thank you. And I thank you for everything that you've done for me, supporting me, thinking of me when there are speaking engagements. I can't tell you how much that means to me, but thank you so much for being on. And guys, go check out Giving Voice to Depression and listen. You'll be fascinated. You will be absolutely fascinated. But thank you again, Terry.
Thank you so much. I'll send you some pictures as soon as we stop.
Thank you. Thank you guys for listening today. If you don't already do it, go follow me everywhere. DivaWithDepression.com, Instagram, all those fun things. And listen to my episodes, share. I hope that you get at least one nugget from today's interview. I know that I have a few, so I hope that you get at least one that's going to help you lead a more peaceful life. Thank you, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.